What's up, CR Youth? I'm so glad you're joining us online tonight. My name's Sophie, and I'm one of the youth pastors here, and you guys, we have a great night ahead of us. In a moment, you're going to hear a message from one of our incredible youth pastors, but right now, if you want to take a moment and be involved in worship, and worship is something that we do every single week here at CR Youth, there's a link down below to a Spotify playlist that kind of shares the same songs that we are singing tonight in person. So take a moment, pause this video, and spend some time in worship with Jesus. And then after you spend some time worshiping and after the message, if you want to be involved in small groups, you can message your small group leader right now if you have their phone number or if you have them on social media to see if they can get you in your small group, either FaceTiming or Zooming in. That would be so great because small groups are so important to Wednesday nights and just so important for us as followers of Christ. And if you don't know your small group leader, if you don't have their phone number, or maybe you don't even know what small group you're in, next week we can make sure we get you in a small group if you email this link below. Tell us what campus you go to, what grade you're in, and we'll make sure we get you in a small group for next week. But you guys, I hope you have a great night and enjoy this message from one of our youth pastors.
Well, what's up, CR Youth? Welcome. I'm so glad that you are here for our Easter Invite Night. If you don't know who I am, my name's Joey King, and I'm just pumped that you're here with us tonight. I want to start off by saying that I'm so excited because we are talking about Easter, which is my favorite holiday. And there's probably like half of the room right now that's saying, Joey, how can Easter be your favorite holiday? Have you ever heard of Christmas? And I know for those of you that are just like one of our worship leaders, Rhea, who loves Christmas so much and wishes Christmas never ended, that the snow never melted, that the Christmas lights never got taken down, and that you could just sit down and watch Hallmark Christmas movies all year round. If that's you, let me tell you, that's not me. And so I'm excited that we're talking about Easter tonight. And actually, on the count of three, I want us all to shout out our favorite holiday. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's hear it. Yeah, yes, yeah, okay. Let's calm down. Okay, so here's what I know, is that holidays are fun, that we all love holidays. And I think a big reason why we love holidays is because they offer fun and unique experiences. And a lot of those have to do with the traditions that we have in our family. And one of the traditions that my family had at Easter was something that I want to tell you about because I thought it was so fun, and maybe your family does something similar. And so what my parents would do is that they would hide an Easter egg, something like this, and they would hide an Easter egg somewhere in my house. And so when I was a kid, I would wake up on Easter morning and I would run around the house. I'd flip the couch, see if it's under the couch. I would dive under the bed. I would push my brother out of the way just to find this little egg. And when I found it, it was like I had won the lottery. It was the greatest feeling in the entire world. I was so pumped up. And each year that went by, I got a little bit better at finding an egg just like this. And so eventually I came to this point where my parents, they said, okay, Joey, you're getting a little too cocky with this, so we're going to make it a little bit more challenging. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to expand the playing field. And if you don't know this about me, I grew up on a farm. And you're probably like, oh my gosh, how do you grow up on a farm? He's wearing skinny jeans. Doesn't make sense, I know. But here's what I know is that my dad's farm, it was massive. Like he's had a shed, he's got pine trees everywhere, he's got a ton of land. And he said, Joey, the egg is somewhere on our property. And so I accepted the challenge. And every year since I was about 13, this egg would be hidden outside. And I'd have to find it. And so I'd run around, I would look in the shadow, I would look underneath the trees, I would look under our deck, I would look all over the place just to find this egg. And even this last Sunday, that's what I did. Don't judge me. I know I'm 23 and I still do Easter egg hunts, but you would too because they're super fun. So that was the tradition that my family had. And I thought it was the best thing in the world. And maybe your family has something similar to that. But as I got older, I began to ask a question. And I said, well, this is all fun and all, but why does Easter really matter? And what I began to learn is that, well, Easter, it doesn't matter because of the Easter egg hunts or because of the ham that we eat or because of the celebrations that we have as families, but actually what matters is the Easter story. And all of those things are just additional. And so tonight, that's actually what we're going to talk about. we're going to talk about the Easter story. Because the Easter story, this story is the most life-changing story that the world has ever heard. And if you're a follower of Jesus in this place, this story is what our faith is built upon. And so tonight we're going to be looking at that story. And right now, if you've been around the church at all, you've probably have heard this story a lot of different times, and it's be really easy for you to tune out. But I want to encourage you not to do that, because God has something for you, and I want you not to miss it. And so we're going to be looking at this story. This story is found in all four Gospels, but we're going to be looking particularly at the book of Matthew. In Matthew chapters 26 through 28. And there's a lot of details that I'm not able to share through our time together, so I'd encourage you to read it on your own as well. So we're going to pick up this story. And what's going on here is that Jesus is in this place called the Garden of Gethsemane. And right before him and his followers end up in this garden, Jesus had just had what's famously known as the Last Supper with his followers. And so just picture this. Like Jesus, he gathers his closest friends, and his closest followers for one Last Supper. And what he tells them is that he is going to die. That he was going to die, and that he wanted to make sure that they would remember him. And so after this supper, he goes into this garden, and he tells his followers to stay behind while he goes off. And he prays to God alone. And he prays a prayer something like this, where he says, God, if there's any other way for your will to be done, where I don't have to die, would you please let it happen? Would you please let it happen? And you see what's going on here is that Jesus, just like you and I, are human. And humans don't want to die. And Jesus didn't want to die either. But there was something that we like to call at church a sin problem between us and God. And what that means is that sin is like when we do something wrong, when we mess up, and when we gossip, or when we lie, or when we cheat, or when we do something that's not like God, there becomes this separation between humans and God. And so that's the problem, and the solution was that God would send his one and only Son, Jesus, this perfect and holy man, to cover our sin, to pay the price for our sin, so that we could be made right with God forever. And so Jesus, he prays this prayer and asks God to find another way. But what God makes very clear to Jesus is that there was no other way. That the only way for us to be made right with God is if Jesus would go to the cross and die for us. And so it's in this moment that Jesus makes a decision. He makes the decision that he is going to go and die for our sin, for our mistakes, and for our shortcomings, so that we can be made right with God. So that's the first thing that happens, is that Jesus makes a decision. And so shortly after Jesus prays this prayer, he comes and he gets arrested by the Roman soldiers, and he's brought before the officials and the high priest and all these different people. And he's questioned, and he's beaten, and he's spat on, and he's punched, and he's treated like garbage. And I think one of the most important and interesting things about this part of the story is that Jesus, he doesn't even defend himself. He's being accused for claiming to be the Son of God, which is what he was. But he doesn't try to tell the truth. He doesn't try to stand up for himself. He rarely even answers any of the questions at all. He kind of just takes what they were saying, and he takes the punishment that they were trying to give him. And I think the biggest reason why he did that is because, like we said, he already made a decision. And so Jesus, he's sentenced to be crucified. And if you don't know what that word crucified means, what that means is that Jesus was sentenced to be killed on a cross. And this was a very common way that people were executed during this time period. And what they would do is they would take these railroad-looking nails, and they would put them through the wrists of the people and through the feet of the people, and they would nail their wrists and their feet to the cross, and then they would hang up on the cross, and they would suffocate to death, and they would die. So Jesus is ordered for that to happen. And so he, with the help of another person, they carry the cross to the top of this hill, and Jesus is hung up on the cross for you and for me. so that we could be made right with God. So Jesus, as he's hanging on the cross, every moment that passes by, death becomes a little bit closer. Every minute that passes, Jesus is in excruciating pain. And then finally, after 3 hours of hanging up on that cross, he dies. And death enters the scene. Death takes place. Death happens. And once the soldiers, they realized that Jesus was dead, they took him off of the cross, and he was laid in a tomb. They rolled a big stone in front of the tomb. And as Jesus lay there, his followers scattered, and they ran because they were terrified. Because for them, a new reality took place. A new reality happened. Because this Jesus, this guy that was the guy that they had been following for the last 3 years, that they had given their entire life to. They had banked on the fact that what he said about himself, that he was the Son of God, that he was this thing called the Messiah, the chosen one, was true. And now, the very one that they trusted with everything lay breathless in a tomb. And so their reality was broken. And it was messed up. And their relationship with God seemed to be strained. And they didn't know where to go. So they ran. And they hid. But as they were hiding, God was up to something. Because during those 3 days that Jesus lay breathless, Jesus was actually going to war with death. And he won. And 3 days later, Jesus resurrected from the dead. So resurrected from the dead. And if you don't know what resurrected means, what that means is that Jesus came back to life. That he beat death. That he overcame the grave. That he went from a dead man to an alive man. He walked out of that tomb all by himself. And so what happened on that first Easter morning was that these two women that were followers of Jesus, they went to visit the tomb. And when they got there, what they saw was that the stone had been rolled away and that the tomb was empty. And when they walked out of the tomb, they saw that there was this angel sitting on top of the stone that had been rolled away, and the angel spoke to them. And what he said was really powerful, and it's recorded in Matthew 28, verses 5 through 6, and it says this. Then the angel spoke to the women. Don't be afraid, he said. I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead, just as he had said would happen. So friends, this is the Easter story. This story of Jesus beating the grave and overcoming death so that we are made right with God forever. Jesus beat death. And that's the most powerful thing that this world has ever seen. And it started the movement of this thing called Christianity. This is an incredible story, and I encourage you to read it on your own after church tonight. But what you need to see is that there's 4 things that took place. And I want you to see these 4 things. These 4 things, the first thing that took place that we saw is that Jesus made a decision. Jesus knew that we were far from God and that there was a separation because of our sin and because of the way that we have messed up. And so the solution was that he needed to make the decision that he was willing to go and die for our sin so that we could be made right with God. That's the solution. And so Jesus makes the decision. And that decision, it leads to his death on the cross. That death on the cross, it led to a new reality for the followers of Jesus where they were broken, they didn't know where to go, they were lost, and they were in a struggling moment with God. But that reality, like we said, only lasted for 3 days because shortly after that, resurrection took place. Where Jesus rose from the grave and he overcame death and he walked out of that tomb. And because of that, we have access to the resurrection. And what I want you to see is that 2 of these things are actually still available to us today. And the 2 things are reality and resurrection. We have access to both our reality and the resurrection. And so I want you to see this. So the first question is, okay, what is our reality? Well, for the context of this message, our reality is the state of our relationship with God. So whatever your relationship with God looks like, that is your reality. Maybe you're here and you don't have any relationship with God at all, that you don't really know this Jesus guy at all, and that's okay. Or maybe you're here and you're somebody who you kind of heard the church messages, you kind of know what's going on, but you're like kind of in a limbo and not sure where you are with God. Or maybe you're here and you've got a great relationship with God. You feel like things are going good and life is going good. And all of those things, that your relationship with God is solid. And so wherever you find yourself, whatever your reality is, what I want you to know is whether you are feeling like your relationship with God is broken and there's nothing there at all, or you feeling like your relationship with God is pretty good. What you need to know is that resurrection is possible. That we can go from a really incredible relationship with God to actually even a deeper relationship with God. Or for those of you who maybe don't have a relationship with God at all, we can go from a completely dead faith to an alive faith. Okay, let me explain what I mean by resurrection is available. Because some of you are probably thinking, Joey, I don't know if you know this, but I'm not dead. I'm not dead. My heart is beating. I'm doing good. And if that's kind of what's going through your mind right now, what I want you to hear is while your heart might be beating and you might be alive, let me ask you, well, how is your faith? How goes your walk with Jesus? Because while your heart might be alive, is your faith alive? Or is your faith dead? Because remember, resurrection is when dead things come back to life. And so for us, your faith may be dead. And what I'm telling you is that because of the resurrection, because of the fact that Jesus beat death, he made it so that dead things can come back to life. And that includes your faith. That includes your walk with Jesus. So if your faith is dead, I'm telling you that it can come back to life. And I want you to see this. I want you to see the difference between our reality and the resurrection. Because our reality, when it comes to our relationship with God, some of us in here, it might be really broken. This is where we all were when we walked into here tonight. We were all on this box called reality. We were all living right here. And our reality is whatever our relationship with God looks like. And for some of us, it might be really broken. It might be really messed up. And we have no idea who God is or really what it looks like to have a relationship with God at all. And you may not even believe in this person named Jesus at all. And this is where every single one of us stood when we walked in here tonight. And because Jesus went to the cross and paid for our sin and then beat death and overcame the grave, we have access to move from our reality to the resurrection. And so where all of us are now being found is actually not on this box called reality. Where we're all being found is we're moving right to the middle. Because of Jesus going to the cross and making it so that we can be made right with God, this is where every single one of us find ourselves. We find ourselves in the middle. And just like Jesus made a decision to go to the cross, each and every one of us has a decision to make right now. Are we going to go back to our reality, or are we going to take a step towards the resurrection? Are we going to go back to everything that we knew about God when we walked into this place? For some of us, would that be going back to not a relationship with God at all? Others of us, it's going back to a questionable relationship at best. Is that where you want to go back? Because that's all that's back at your old reality, is everything that you've experienced in the past, everything that you've encountered with God in the past. But over here at the box of resurrection, this is a close relationship with God. A faith that went from being dead to being fully alive. Over here at the box of resurrection is a deep relationship with God where you know him deeply and you pursue him every day. But it's not going to happen on accident, because every single one of us, this is where we find ourselves. We find ourselves right in the middle. And we have a decision to make. And you're the only one that can make that decision. So let me ask you, do you need a resurrection in your life? Does your faith need to come back alive? Has your faith been dead and need to come to life? Have you been struggling in your relationship with God and you need to come back to life? Where are you at with this whole thing called following Jesus? And maybe some of you, as you find yourself in the middle right now, you're thinking, I don't even know how I got here. Like, I just came here because my friend invited me, and now I'm faced with a decision. Like, I don't even believe in God. I don't even know what I thought about God when I walked in here, but right now I'm starting to feel something. And I'm starting to know that I have a decision to make. And others of you, as you find yourself in the middle, you come to see our youth every single week. Like, it's your thing. You don't miss it. But right now, you're realizing that your reality, what you walked into this place, what you believed about God and thought about God when you came here tonight, it wasn't so solid. You were struggling with trusting God, struggling with a sin in your life. And what you're seeing is, man, I want to go from that. I want to go from having a faith that was struggling to a faith that is fully alive. And that's where I lived. I lived on this box of reality for a long time in my life. I went to the church stuff. I heard the messages. I did the dance. But I continually chose to go back to my reality. As I stood in the middle, I continually chose to go back to what I knew, to go back to what was comfortable, to go back to what I was familiar with. Because it felt good and it was easy. But there came a day as I sat on this box of reality and I looked at this resurrected King Jesus, and I knew that there had to be more to life. There had to be more. And so I made a decision to stop continually just going back to that, and I made a decision to take a step towards the resurrection, to take a step towards this resurrected King Jesus and begin to follow him. And what I experienced when I stood on the box of resurrection was a life that could never be changed. A life that could never look any different. A life that could never go back to that box. Because Jesus had changed my life forever. And I began to experience life the way that it was intended to be experienced. In fact, that's why he came. He came so that we would experience the resurrection, so that we would experience faith that is fully alive, faith that is active, faith that chooses to pursue Jesus and give him everything every single day. But that only happens when we live life to the fullest. And in fact, that's why Jesus came. And he says that in John 10, verse 10. He says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Friends, the fullest version of life is on the table tonight. That because Jesus went to the cross and paid for our sins and overcame the grave, each and every one of us is standing right here in the middle. So what box are you going to head to? What box are you going to take a step towards? Are you going to go back to your reality? Are you going to go back to that same broken relationship with God, that same relationship that's questioning and doubting and not sure? And are you going to go take a step towards the resurrected King Jesus? You're going to take a step towards experiencing life and experiencing faith the way that it was supposed to be experienced. And go from a dead faith to a faith that is fully alive. And it's possible. It's possible because of what Jesus did for us. And so you're going to have an opportunity to make that decision. You're going to have an opportunity to take a step towards Jesus. But before we do that, why don't you lean in and check this out. That song is all about everything that we've been talking about tonight. The fact that this resurrected King Jesus, this man who beat the grave, who went to the cross for you and for me, can resurrect us too. That can bring our faith from something that may be dead and broken to fully alive. So each and every one of us, this is where we're standing. Right here. Right in the middle of everything that we've known about God and everything we've experienced about God. And right in the middle between resurrection. And so what's it going to be? Are you going to take a step towards what you've known? Are you just going to go back to everything that you've known? Or are you going to take a step towards the resurrection and experience life the way that God has intended us to experience it? And that, my friends, is a decision that only you can make. Like, you can go back to that, and that's okay if that's what you want to choose, but I'm telling you, you are missing out on what God has for you over here. So what's it going to be? That's a decision that you have to make. And as I sit here and as I stand here and I share this with you, I want to encourage you to make a decision to follow Jesus, to follow this King that's alive and that's active. And when you do that, what I'm telling you is you're going to experience life completely differently. You'll be forever changed. And so I'm challenging you to make a step, to take a step towards this resurrection, to take a step towards Jesus. And if that's what you want to do, I'm so excited for you. And I want to lead you in a prayer. And so wherever you're watching, whether it's your room or on a TV or whatever, I just want you to simply pause and repeat this prayer after me. Jesus, I thank you. I thank you that you love me. I thank you that you died for me. God, I want to follow you for the rest of my life. Jesus, I give you everything, and I'm taking a step towards you. And if you just prayed that prayer, we at CR Youth are so excited for you. Because what you're doing is you're saying you're taking a step away from the broken relationship and the misconceptions about God, and you're taking a step towards the risen King and experiencing faith that is alive. And we want to help you on this journey called life and this journey called faith. And so we're going to actually want to be able to reach out to you and connect with you. And so if you just made a decision for Jesus, we want you to go ahead and send an email to this email right here, youth@crossroads.co. And if you do that, one of our youth pastors will reach out to you and will connect with you and help you with next steps. And we're so excited that you tuned in tonight. We're excited if you made a decision for Jesus to take a step to go deeper with him forever. And we just hope that you have an incredible, incredible rest of your night.